Hey, it's Rod Yates here. Welcome to another episode of Humans of Music, a Jaxsta podcast. Each episode, I talk to a music creator or industry professional about their life and career, the ups and downs of their journey, and the lessons they've learned. And my special guest today is Pond vocalist and multi-instrumentalist Nick Allbrook. So Pond came out of the incredibly fertile scene that was happening in the West Australian city of Fremantle in the mid-2000s. It's the same scene which gave birth to Tame Impala, and both Nick and multi-instrumentalist Jay Watson were playing with Tame at that time. In fact, Jay's still playing with Tame Impala. The scene also gave birth to acts like Mink Muscle Creek, as well as solo acts like Jay Watson's Gum and Shiny Joe Ryan. And all the members would swap in and out of each other's bands in this incredibly supportive musical community. Now, thanks to the fact that Fremantle and the nearby city of Perth are some of the most isolated cities in the world, the whole scene was allowed to develop out of the reach of the music industry. Now, Nick knew a thing or two about seclusion before he moved to Fremantle, having grown up in a small town called Derby, which is located near the top of Western Australia, hundreds of miles from the nearest town of any size. We talk about his upbringing in this interview, his memories of coming up in the Fremantle scene, his decision to leave Tame Impala in 2013, and much more. But we started by talking about Pond's new album, 9. I understand that spontaneity was a key word when you were creating this record. How did that manifest?
It manifested by, being able to start songs from a very small seed compared to how we had done it before. Like, just having like a nascent idea, like a little tape loop that has a good sonic quality to it.
Yeah.
Or a jam with some good bits in it or something, and just being able to take our time and build it from there.
And why now to approach it like that?
It was just time. I don't know. The spirits said so. It was just the moment to do it. I don't know. We've just felt like we've had more of a vibe with kind of playing. I don't know, maybe it's like the relative like joy in the world as it sort of, leaks down the plug hole. We're trying to fill it up from our own end by having some sort of like wholesome human experience, like making music together and this sort of immediate joy.
And I was reading you talking about the, composition of Pink Lunette, and talking about the fact that I guess it started with this loop that Jay had, and then at some point you pulled out a miscellaneous phrase book to start helping with the lyrics. What is a miscellaneous phrase book, and then how do you then apply that to songwriting?
Well, I mean, I've got my books of lyrics and stuff, that I try and keep in some sort of structure. One is for lyrics and one's for flute practice or something like that. But they always cross over just because I can't be asked going to get the other one. But then there's a page where I was just writing down like snippets from the world, from around me, from stuff that hadn't maybe didn't have the time or for some reason didn't get built into a full song. Either a quote from a book or a billboard or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's such a weird sort of mad song. I couldn't really think none of us could really think how to make a very defined composed melody. So I just sort of in the spirit of the rest of the album, I'm just gonna have to just yell it out and see what happens.
And is there then a coherent thread through that song, or is it literally just the different kind of phrases which sound good rhythmically or melodically?
It's pretty much that. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I could do, if I sort of analysed it like a sort of Rorschach test, I could find a thread,
yeah,
and some sort of subconscious meaning behind it, but I really don't know what that is. It was there were just bits that I thought sounded very beautiful, or that I was interested in even.
Yeah, nice. In terms of lyrically across the record in general, you've said that this album focuses perhaps more on the minutiae of daily life as opposed to some of the grander themes that you explored on The Weather and Tasmania. Where you took on some quite heavy themes like colonization and the environment. And there still seems to be a little bit of that, in a song like Check Locomotive, you have that lyric, Happy New Year's, too bad it's covered in smoke. So there seems to still be some environmental commentary on there. But is it in general more focused on the everyday and what you just see in your everyday life?
Yeah, totally. It's hard to say why. I mean, part of it could be that it's so overwhelming now. It feels, maybe I said this for the last one as well, but it's just getting so prescient and like it's right in our face. And I think I just sort of maybe reached a point of overwhelm where tackling these things just seems so, firstly done, but also just absolutely unbearable. And then there's also the element of being in lockdown where mine and everyone else's world did shrink. It became vastly smaller, and so instead of sort of having these sort of macrocosmic fisheye goggles on where I was trying to look out in a big way, I was just sort of looking at the immediate ground around me.
And that's where a song like, Gold Cup, Plastic Soul comes into it. Is that correct? So Gold Cup being a brand of slippers, the slippers that you've worn for many, many years. Is that a metaphor for something, or is it a song about your slippers?
Well, that's the thing that like a lot of the songs, like I was saying, like you start with a very small thing. Like we managed to like trust our own intuition and our own creativity, and it sort of blossoms out into something bigger. And in the same way, like, I definitely did start I was writing, I guess, like a poem or something about my slippers. And then through free association, it does start becoming a metaphor for something bigger. Like I started thinking about the factory where it was made and why they were so unbearably cheap.
Right.
And where they'd been throughout the last, 12, 15 years, and what the wear on the bottom said to them, and what the, the sort of verbal associations were of plastic sole, and the very thin plastic sole that was keeping me like half a centimetre or a centimetre away from the earth which I'd been walking along for however long. It did kind of blossom out into something that felt quite deep for me, at least.
And I read a quote from you where you were saying that making a record takes so much time and so much flagellation. It's spent thinking you suck. Does that still apply to your creative process? Was that your feelings while you were making 9?
Oh, it's like it goes in every direction, Almost the whole battle is just overcoming the feeling, your own self-doubt, because the process is entirely making something and then looking at or listening to the parts that you don't like. And it's so easy to see those parts that you don't like and go, stuff it. I'm done. I'm terrible. That's the end. But like, I guess that's the marathon of it is revising it and building it until it is something that you actually is either what you thought of beforehand. Well, it's never really what you thought of beforehand, but something that your spirit tells you is good, whatever that means.
It sounds like a exhausting process.
Yeah, totally. It is, it's a process that I always. It's like I've heard from what I've heard of pregnancy. Like I wouldn't want to compare it to that type of pain at all, but like you forget how painful it is, and so you go back for it again.
Right.
And no matter how many times you do it, you forget. You think, that would be great. That would be a fun thing to do. And then halfway through the album process, you think, what am I doing? Why am I doing this again? You know?
I'd like to take you back to, I guess, the beginning of how you even got to this point in your life. And when I say go back to the beginning, I really mean to the beginning, where you were raised in Derby. Is it Derby or Derby in the Kimberley in Western Australia?
We say Derby.
Derby. Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very remote location. What can you tell me about Derby growing up there?
It's right on the King Sound. It's got the second biggest tides in the world, after I think the Great Lakes in Canada. Mm-hmm. I think that was it. But I think I was told that a long time ago, so I might have got shifted. It's close to Broome by Western Australian standards.
So this, for context, for people who perhaps aren't from Australia or don't know the geography of Australia. So when you say it's close to Broome, which is a decent-sized place in Western Australia, like how far away, like to give us an idea of how isolated it is?
I think it's 280 kilometres north. But yeah, it's a world away from Broome. You know, it's not a tourist town, Derby. It doesn't have white beaches. It doesn't have a microbrewery. It doesn't have a nice hotel, like, you know, or anything like that. It's got a massive jetty. And I think just after me and my family left, they were starting to build a huge tidal power plant there. But apart from that, it was sort of like the town base for just a shitload of like cattle stations and stuff. Okay. Just sort of a stop off for like the canning stock route.
So what did you do for fun there growing up?
Oh, all the good stuff. You know, played footy, played cricket, went to the marshes, you know, just sort of stuffed around. I remember there was like some rope swings on coming off boab trees and stuff like that. We'd climb trees, play.
Yeah, nice.
Ride our bikes around, get real hot, drink cordial. Then, you know, my best friend got a Nintendo, so we did a lot of that. I used to draw a lot too. Yeah.
And from what I understand, it has a very big Indigenous population.
Yeah.
What did you learn of the Aboriginal culture from growing up there, and what did you see of their culture?
A lot, because my folks were working really, really closely to the point where they were family with some families. And like my dad was working for the Kimberley Land Council, which in the 90s was going through it was a really heady time for Indigenous land rights and native title and stuff like that. And my mum was writing a book about Stockman and spending a lot of time with particularly one very old couple who were one of the last remaining people to have seen the entire arc, this grand arc of the Indigenous experience from pre-colonisation to stolen generation to missionary schooling and forced integration to first working on cattle stations and then becoming the backbone of the farming industry up there, becoming cowboys, like the best cowboys in the country. Mm. And then, you know, when the sort of 1967 Welfare Act came in and, for all its good intentions, banned this indentured labour because they weren't getting paid. They're getting paid in like tobacco and sugar and grog, essentially. And then the Australian government, instead of starting to pay these very, very hard workers, they just put them on reserves. And oftentimes they weren't in their their land, their spiritual home. So they'd be put somewhere new and relatively foreign, and left with the sort of, the burdens of Western culture, like consumption, disease, and addiction, sugar, man. Yeah, and so we were very close, and like I don't know what did I learn? Like a bunch of stuff. I suppose I did learn. Maybe I didn't appreciate it so much at the time, but I did learn that about the land having its own sort of massive spiritual force that was so much greater than us, and to never have like the hubris of like a colonizer that you could overcome it, because like a flash flood will not let you drive a 4-wheel drive, and taboo places for certain people will haunt you and will change your life. I guess spiritually it did affect me quite a lot.
Right. I've seen you speak about your exposure to music while you were still in Derby, and I believe your dad was responsible for giving you cassettes of like Jethro Tull and David Bowie and Led Zeppelin. Was that your musical education when you were living there?
Nah, when I was living there, it was more like I think my folks were too busy, or too like they were too countrified. So it was like they had the like a really typical early 90s Australian parent CD stack.
What's in that?
I felt like I saw it everywhere, like in every house I went to. And it's always that Dire Straits album with the guitar, the flying guitar on the front. The best of Bob Marley.
I want to say Eric Clapton Unplugged. I want to say that.
Yeah. I feel like that was there. But I know that my folks they loved, do you know the musical Brand New Day?
Yeah.
Yeah, by Jimmy Chai. They loved that because he was a really, really close friend of ours. He actually was the first, but he had a really good communication with me when I was a baby, because he was quite a far out guy, like really, really, some might call it mad, but he was, he had one foot on the other side, I feel, at all times. And so talking to babies, he was really good at talking to babies, and He was the first person to interpret what I was saying, because I kept on saying da, and they were sort of like, is he saying dad? Is he saying dad? And Mr. Chai said, no, that's the word for the fan. Going tick, tick.
How did he know that?
I don't know. He's just like he had a special connection.
Nice.
But I remember that was a really big part. And then I made friends who were a bit like, they were from Perth, and they were really into The Offspring and Silverchair and Korn.
Right.
And that's when I started rocking out on my own,
So what took what age were you when you moved to Fremantle, and what took your family there?
I was 13. I was 13 when we went back to Fremantle. I don't know what took us there. I guess part of it must have been that my folks had some kind of they knew that Derby wasn't a place for teenagers. It's not, and they were right. It's not. You start getting bored. You start getting bored and doing stupid stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the education was not good up there, really. Sure. As in the school.
Sure.
Yeah, the school system. So I guess that was a part of it. I'm sure Dad was probably getting sick of working at KLC as well. Mum had finishing her book. It was just time. it's time to go back to the city. Yeah.
And is that where your musical endeavors began in terms of learning instruments and finding people to play with?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I started meeting people much later. I didn't start playing guitar till I was like 16 or something, but I'd started listening to, classic rock.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like you said, Dad had, I guess he'd forgotten about it up north, forgotten about what he actually used to enjoy and how much of a head he was, you know?
Right.
a long-haired rocker. And I remember we were at the video store when you used to do that at Jumbo Video in Fremantle and doing our weekly VHS hire. And he saw a Who CD, like the best of the Who.
Okay.
And we got it and he was like, "You're going to love this." And turned it up when we got back in the car and it absolutely blew my mind.
Right.
And from there it was, I guess it was every birthday and Christmas I'd get a little stack of CDs, that was just slowly filling up the classics of like Zeppelin, Lou Reed, Transformer, Aqualung, Bowie. And then I started delivering papers and getting enough money to start branching out and getting, the Velvet Underground and T-Rex and so getting independent.
So what's the link? Because I'm listening to those artists that you're just talking about there, and what's the link between that music, which was quite formative for you, and the music which you've gone on to make? And I appreciate there's many years, and I presume it's just a slow, gradual process to finding the music you want to make, which, for lack of a better term, often gets dubbed in the psych or the psychedelic realm, whether that's warranted or not. But how do you find your way to that? Is it just a gradual journey of meeting people and soaking in other influences?
Yeah, totally. I guess, something about the trippy side of it really started catching me. Hendrix and then I met, like friends who were smoking cones and stuff like that, and like and discovering the internet, like being shown at the same time, like getting ripped and going on like krautrock forums,
right,
and stuff like that, and like really deep diving into way more than I do now, like made a life of it, like just going all over the place, and yeah, it was just gradual, like so many twists and turns and deviations into like Can and Toad and Caravan, the sort of Canterbury soft machine type things, and Amondul too. And then I remember I met these guys playing in this like stoner doom band in Perth called Cease, which was unbelievable, like this visceral, crazy experience to watch. Like watching a really, really, really dangerous motorbike stunt, and the rider was drunk and high. So it could be a crash 50% of the time. It was amazing. And at the time I was studying medieval history at university. I'd like left school, and so this sort of coming together of those kind of fantasy-looking things started making me really into like post-Sabbath doom, like Boris and Acid King and Electric Wizard and Pelican and stuff like that. So that started being an influence too.
After the break, Nick talks about the Fremantle music scene and his decision to leave Tame Impala and focus on Pond. Welcome back to Humans of Music and my interview with Nick Allbrook. It's always very easy to look back in retrospective at sort of times in musical history, but people do look back on the period in Fremantle when you were starting to be active in the music scene. And I think Electric Blue Acid Dogs was one of your first bands, and then that morphed into Mink Muscle Creek, from what I understand. Mink Muscle Creek also featured Kevin Parker, who would go on to Tame Impala, and also Joe Ryan, who performs also as Shiny Joe Ryan.
Yeah.
At the same time, Kevin had the DD Dums, and Jay Watson came to play with him in that band. You all kind of you, Jay, and Kevin all end up playing with Kevin in Tame Impala. I mean, how did you, obviously very like-minded people, how did you all find each other? Is it just through playing on the scene back then?
Yeah, essentially. We saw something, I guess, in each other, whatever it was, and we got on really, really, really well. And we started living together.
What was that house like?
It was pretty good. It was pretty good. Yeah, it was like really deep in quite nice suburbia. And I don't know, for some reason that there was just this house of these freaks. Like in the middle of this very quiet sort of middle class suburban area in like Daglish. It was fun, man. It was a great house. We had so much fun. We got really lucky. The backyard sort of backed onto this little shared communal garden, and there was a mulberry tree there that we called Mulberria. And it was fairly close to my uni. It was close to Kings Park, which we used to go tripping. And yeah, we had a great time. We were like really excited. We had a real excitement about making music and being in this situation. We'd do it every day, every night, every day, same thing, loving it.
And you're not jamming on anything specifically for any one project. Are you just kind of just making music for the hell of it?
Yeah, I mean, we did both. We'd all hop in the cars and go to the Norfolk basement and rehearse, like for Mink Muscle Creek, and they'd go and do Tame Impala. I think it was Tame Impala by then. And then, when we weren't doing that, we'd just be at home, like stuffing around with like mandolins or, getting stoned. I remember a period of getting stoned and trying to do like real like folky jams. I guess that was like a combination of me being like this sort of obsessed like fantasy medieval head, and Joe being Irish.
Right.
So he had all the gear, the pipes and the whistles and the mandolin and bouzouki. He got bouzouki, which was huge.
Wow.
Yeah. And we'd all get ripped and just like have these long jams. I think we did that so much. It was so fun.
And does that explain why you're all multi-instrumentalists? Why you'll play drums with Peter Bibby and then play, guitar in Pond and, play flute, play bass? Like,
yeah.
It's just all come from that?
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah. Joe bought a sitar too, which somehow we managed to play. like this incredibly delicate, nuanced instrument, classical instrument. I just feel it's almost embarrassing, these lummoxes, just like bashing away at this beautiful thing.
Were your neighbours down with it?
Oh God, what was his name? Ian. It was this single older guy who lived like in the attached house next door to us.
Oh, it was attached.
Oh man, I think of him often. Poor guy, that must have been so annoying. Because we'd climb up on the roof all the time, like be jamming on the roof, drag a mattress onto the roof, stuff like that. And yeah, he was just through this, this wooden fence, watering his plants every day.
Oh dear. Well, I'm sure he'd have a few stories to tell now. A lot has been made of the fact that you were because of the isolation of Perth and Fremantle, is that you were able to do this in isolation to an extent. There was no, you could play shows and there wouldn't be record company people there. There wouldn't be journalists there or you know, as many as you would have perhaps on the East Coast. And again, when you couple that with you growing up in a relatively isolated area and not having the music industry at your door, did all this combine just to give you a completely different take on art and music and what you wanted to do with music and what you defined as success?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to say though, because like I'm 33 now, and I'm very wary of getting into self-mythologizing because like my memory, I think that's what happened. I feel like it must have, but I don't remember, at least for a long time, having any sort of idea that anyone would ever hear our music. I remember having these very these really small and grand ambitions at the time of like playing it in the Pines, which is a small like community radio festival. I was thinking that would be really cool. Or releasing a record, like having a that would be amazing. And yeah, I think we were just so distant from it. We were so far away, and it would have definitely allowed a sort of a very different incubation period, and probably like the special variation on the Galapagos, it probably allowed us to evolve into something sort of kind of weird.
Which is incredibly fortunate and something that a lot of people aren't afforded, and it just would have seemed normal to you at the time. That's just natural.
Absolutely, and I could see that with heaps of other bands too at the time, groups, artists who would all be chucked on stage in like the Hyde Park Hotel and just like make some fucking god awful noise, and then everyone sort of go like, "Yeah, great, man, cool. Hey, do you want to play next week too?" And then for some reason, this mad scheme you've come up with your housemate is getting you 2 gigs a week, and 6 months later, you're actually quite good at it.
Right.
And I saw so many people doing this, like this ridiculous experiment of just like doing something dumb, and then after a while, it's like it's actually quite a realized thing.
Yeah. So when I guess the prying eyes of the world do come calling, and I suppose the Tame Impala albums, Lonerism and Inner Speaker, were probably the magnet that drew the rest of the world in.
Yeah.
How did that impact the scene? How did that impact you? I mean, was there a wariness to the attention that was coming on that scene?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. Looking back on it, I remember we made a bit of a thing, especially when we'd like go to Sydney or something. I remember we were pretty I didn't feel like we fit in, but I remember being almost quite proud, sort of proud of our foreignness and our strangeness to people.
Why do you think you didn't fit in? Was it a musical thing or just a personality thing?
Just a personality thing, and I don't think it's entirely because we're like from Perth or something. I think we're just pretty weird people. Well, I know I am. It took me a very long time to realize that like. Once I realised that, I sort of had this tidal wave of anxiety. Like, am I that person that comes in to a group, has a little chat and a beer, and then I leave and everyone's like, God, he's weird. You know?
What led to that revelation?
I don't know. Someone pointed at it. Someone mentioned it. Maybe it was my girlfriend. Like, you're a pretty weird guy. Like, what? No, I'm not. I'm a very personable, normal bloke. But I don't know. I think at the time, I think for a while, I sort of wore it as a badge of honor. But
And you embraced it. Did it give you a freedom to embrace it once you recognized it?
I think I'm still sort of grappling with that.
Okay.
Yeah. But then, maybe there was a sort of strange thing in Perth. I think most of our friends were just very proud. But there was a little bit where it started getting, because we're really young as well, and it started being a bit of a head fuck, kind of, having one foot in like playing, gigs in London and around the world and stuff like that, and then coming back and like, crashing on people's couches or whatever.
Because the money wasn't there.
Yeah. And also because just didn't have time.
Mm.
There wasn't any point. Like, we didn't really have the cash to keep a rental going while we were away. I mean, me at least. Like, I think the other guys sort of sorted it out a bit better. But I don't know. I've always been a bit useless with that.
I saw a quote from your manager Jodie, and she was suggesting that Pond actually started almost as a reaction to the intensity of Tame Impala. It was an outlet that you could use and just be really loose, and I guess not have that pressure or the maelstrom of what was happening with Tame Impala at the time. Does that resonate with you? Do you think that's what you saw in Pond?
Yeah, I think so. I think we all saw probably something different but the same. There'd be a Venn diagram that sort of was us getting what we all wanted. But yeah, in part, yes. It was also just really exciting and cool for its own sake, But there was probably a part of it, where Jay could, express his vast musical and creative abilities, genius, without maybe having someone else who was just as much of a genius.
Right.
Kevin. And, I was, Mink Muscle Creek was sort of, falling away. It wasn't really working out. And I just really wanted I wanted a band. I wanted something to do. And these guys were my best friends, and they were really good.
Yeah.
And they all shared something, and we had a sort of new kind of idea that wasn't the Mink Muscle Creek thing for me. It was this, a new start.
Yeah.
A new start, a new possibility that was really exciting.
I think one of the lovely things about it, though, is that there doesn't seem to have ever been any animosity. It was, you started Pond and, Kevin would help mix or produce and Jay would be involved with Pond. Like, it just seems to have been this support group and just an appreciation for each other's talents.
Yeah, and in that we've been really lucky. That's been one of the great blessings of my life.
So when you stepped outside from Tame in 2013, what was it like stepping out of that bubble?
God, was it that long ago?
Yeah.
Wow. It was pretty full on. Yeah, it was quite emotional when it was actually over, and I went. It was a lot of stuff to sort of deal with. A lot of, did I just completely stuff my life? But also, being like, I'm glad I'm out. I'm glad I'm following what I need to do. But it was very confusing for my little addled, brain, undernourished, confused brain. I went and worked at the hospital as an orderly with Jamie Terry.
I saw that. What was that? Just to get some normality back?
Yeah, I mean that was this huge part of my I had this sort of pathological, intrusive thought while on tour with Tame Impala that I was losing my ability to be a normal member of society. And I think I felt a huge guilt like a huge guilt about being not being one with society and not having any kind of agency, you know, in myself, and where that was going to lead me, what sort of pathetic situation that was going to lead me in the end. So yeah, I wanted to try and like reintegrate and also make some coin, probably, you know.
Right. But you still had, you know, music was still obviously important to you because Pond could become your main focus. And then I guess perhaps the Beardwives Denim album was the one that I think NME gave it a glowing 9 out of 10 review. And this is about the same time as you're at South by Southwest. And now there was a buzz forming around Pond. So given one of the reasons why you left Tame Impala was to reintegrate into society, now that Pond is taking off, did you have similar fears about losing touch with society?
I didn't. No, I didn't. I think it had a different glow about it because I was part of creating. I was part of writing, and it was part of my expression, and part of my dream. You know, part of the dream.
Right.
Like to be performing your own music, and yeah. No, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel that with Pond. I just, it was just so much fun. It was just so much fun, sort of like barreling around the world in this sort of circus.
Yeah. Is that how it still feels today?
No, it doesn't. We're very, you know, in our dotage.
The grand old age of 33.
The grand old age of 33. No, it's a lot. It doesn't have that circus feel at all. No, it really felt like a sort of, you know, like a sort of merry prankster kind of mad thing when we first started, like that South by Southwest thing with
Sure.
Pond. You know, we had our friend Nathan Savage was on the tour and sort of just like jumping on stage, and we just had Jody was just the only crew pretty much.
Right.
And so together we've made this sort of very like this crazy group of people in a splitter van going across America, like stumbling out in a plume.
But I imagine that must also have eased any fears that you had when you were saying when you left Tame and you thought, if I stuffed up my life, and you would see them, Kevin, go on to have success. The fact that you were doing something that meant so much to you as well must have eased any fears that you'd made the wrong move.
Yeah. No, I didn't wallow in self-reflection too much with that. I felt I just sort of moved on and started having a good time. And of course, like you said before, it helped a lot that we're all really, really good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it always felt good.
Nice.
Felt good.
So when you put all that in context with 9, does this feel like an album that is the sum of some of those parts that you've just discussed? Like you had to get through those bits to get to 9, or is that too neat a summation?
Oh, it's never neat, is it? It's never neat. I mean, like, you know, your future changes with every new step, you know. And I don't think it was all like a sort of destined fate pointing to this direction. And I don't think this is even a summation of what we've done. It's just another step.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a messy bloody world we're living in, and we're very messy-brained creatures. So I don't think it could ever be neat.
Right. Nick, just before we finish up, Jaxsta is all about giving credit where credit is due. Are there people you'd give credit to for helping you get where you are today?
Oh, yeah, God. I have benefited so much from so many people who have just helped me, mostly out of the kindness of their hearts in a creative way, which is the only way that creativity can exist, really, is if it's, as Alejandro Jodorowsky says, that's the only way you can do something purely creative, is if it's for giving on and for benefiting people around you. And people have done that for me all over. Jodie Regan, Kevin, Jay, Joe, Jamie, James Ireland, you know, Evelyn Ida Morris, Shags Chamberlain. There are just endless people, all the people that work at our management and all the people who work around the world to help us and go out of their way doing crazy things, to talking to me like a human being when I'm in another country. People who have put me up on their couches. Nick O'Dell, who let me crash every time I came back from tour and gave me a hot meal and a family. My parents, you know, the list just is endless. I would be nothing.
Nick, thanks so much for your time. It's been really great to talk to you. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. It's been bizarre and really, really lovely to do a sort of deep dive into myself. I feel like I was turning myself inside out. You can see my bloody heart beating on the outside.
And that's it for another episode of Humans of Music. A big thanks to Nick for his time, and thank you for listening. And just a reminder that Pond's new album, 9, is out now. If you have any feedback on the show or suggestions on who you'd like me to interview, or even if you just want to say hello, please drop me a line at humansofmusic@jaxsta.com. That's humansofmusic, one word, at Jaxsta, JAXSTA.com. This episode was mixed by Lachlan Mitchell from Parliament Studios in Annandale, and the incidental music and theme song were written and performed by Sam Lockwood. Please remember to subscribe to the Humans of Music podcast so you never miss an episode, or even better, share it amongst your friends and rate and review it. And remember, next time you need to know who wrote a song, who produced a song, who engineered it, who played on it, who sang on it, who did anything on it, head to jaxsta.com for all your official music credit information. Until the next episode of Humans of Music, I'm Rod Yates. Thanks for listening.